The sun was just dipping below the horizon when I stepped into the abandoned amusement park. I'd heard the stories, the urban legends, but my curiosity outweighed my fear. The gates creaked ominously as I pushed them open, the rusted hinges protesting my intrusion into this long-forgotten playground. A dense fog rolled in, swirling around my feet, and the eerie silence was punctuated only by the distant call of a lone crow. The ride stood like skeletal sentinels, their once vibrant colours faded to ghostly pastels. The Ferris wheel loomed ahead, its cars swaying slightly in the breeze, casting long shadows that danced and twisted on the cracked pavement. I wandered aimlessly at first, drawn to the carousel in the centre of the park. It seemed untouched by time, its ornate horses frozen in mid-gallop, mirrors gleaming in the twilight. The air around it seemed to shimmer, and as I approached I felt an inexplicable pull, a compulsion to climb aboard. Without a second thought, I stepped onto the platform and chose a white stallion with a golden mane. The moment I touched it, the carousel jolted to life, lights flickering on and the haunting melody of a calliope filling the air. The world around me blurred as the ride began to spin faster and faster, the mirrors reflecting not my own face but scenes from my past, memories I had long buried. Faces of people I loved and lost swirled around me, their expressions frozen in time. My heart ached as I saw my childhood dog barking joyfully, then morphing into my grandmother, her face lined with the wisdom and sorrow of years. The images became more disjointed, more chaotic, blending together in a kaleidoscope of colour and emotion. Just as I felt I could take no more, the carousel ground to a sudden halt, flinging me to the ground. Dazed, I looked up to find myself no longer in the amusement park, but in a dense, mist-covered forest. The trees towered above me, their branches interwoven to form a nearly impenetrable canopy. The only light came from a series of glowing orbs floating in the air, illuminating a narrow path that wound deeper into the woods. With no other option, I followed the path, the fog curling around me like a living thing. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of my own footsteps and the occasional rustle of unseen creatures. After what felt like hours, I emerged into a clearing dominated by a massive oak tree. Its gnarled branches stretched out like arms, and at its base was a wooden door partially ajar. Heart-pounding, I approached the door and pushed it open. Inside was a small, dimly lit room, its walls lined with bookshelves filled with dusty tomes and strange artifacts. In the center of the room stood a table, and on it a large, intricately carved mirror. As I stepped closer, the surface of the mirror rippled, and an image began to form. It showed a version of me, but not quite. There was something off, something unsettling. The reflection's eyes were darker, its smile twisted. I reached out to touch the glass, and the reflection mirrored my movement. But instead of meeting a solid surface, my hand passed through, as if the mirror were a portal. Suddenly the reflection lunged forward, grabbing my wrist and pulling me through the mirror. I tumbled into darkness, a whirlwind of sensations and sounds overwhelming my senses. When I finally regained my bearings, I found myself in a labyrinth of mirrors, each one reflecting not only my physical form, but different versions of myself. Some younger, some older, some almost unrecognizable. Each mirror seemed to hold a fragment of my soul, a piece of my past or a potential future. As I navigated the maze, I began to feel a sense of dread. The mirrors started to show more disturbing images. Nightmares I thought I had forgotten, fears I never dared to confront. I came across a mirror that showed a dark, endless void. As I stared into it, the void began to change, forming into a familiar scene. It was my bedroom, but something was wrong. The shadows were too deep, too menacing, and the air seemed to thrum with a malevolent energy. Before I could react, I was sucked into the mirror, landing with a thud on the floor of my bedroom. Everything was eerily silent, the only sound my ragged breathing. I got to my feet, my skin prickling with a sense of foreboding. I knew, without knowing how, that something was in the house with me. I crept through the hallway, the shadows shifting and twisting in the corners of my vision. As I passed the mirror in the hallway, I saw not my reflection, but that of the twisted version of myself from the carousel. It grinned at me, a chilling, predatory smile. Panicking, I ran to the living room, but it was empty. I turned to go back, and there it was, standing in the doorway, blocking my escape. The twisted version of me stepped forward, its eyes gleaming with malice. "You can't escape," it whispered, its voice a distorted echo of my own. "You're mine now." Desperate, I lunged for the front door, but it slammed shut with a deafening bang. The house seemed to close in around me, the walls pressing in, the shadows growing darker and more oppressive. I was trapped with no way out. The twisted reflection advanced, and I felt a cold, clammy hand on my shoulder. I spun around, but there was no one there. The room began to spin, and I felt myself being pulled back through the maze of mirrors, back through the portal. until I was once again standing in front of the large, intricately carved mirror in the dimly lit room. But this time I was not alone. The twisted version of myself stood beside me, its smile widening. "Welcome home," it said, and I realized with a jolt of terror that I was now the reflection, trapped in the mirror while the twisted version of myself was free, walking away, leaving me to my fate. I pounded on the glass, but no sound emerged. The room beyond grew darker and darker until there was nothing but blackness. My last thought before the darkness consumed me was a desperate question. Would anyone ever find me, or would I be trapped here forever, a prisoner of my own nightmares? In the real world, a young woman stands in front of the mirror, her eyes vacant, a twisted smile playing on her lips. She turns and walks away, leaving the amusement park behind. She has no memory of who she once was, only a vague, haunting sense of loss. The carousel stands silent and still, waiting for the next curious soul to step aboard and take the ride of their life.